When we think of North Korea, it's easy to picture this state of total surveillance, a system of control that seems like it was just dropped in, fully formed from the Soviet Union's playbook. But what if that's not the whole story? The truth behind how the DPRK actually built one of the most effective social control systems in modern history is, well, it's way more complex and honestly a lot more fascinating. To really get it, we need to look at how it was built piece by piece.
So in this explainer, we're going to walk through the 5 key parts of this story. We'll kick things off with the big central question, then we'll look at the colonial foundation Japan left behind. After that, we'll see how the Soviets came in and built on it, how a totally new police force was created, and finally, how the people themselves were shaped to fit into this new society. All right, so let's dive right in with the big mystery at the heart of all this.
How was North Korea's system of control really built? The common story, the one we hear all the time, is that it was basically a carbon copy of Stalin's USSR, just plopped down on the Korean Peninsula after World War II. But when you dig into the history, the evidence shows something way different and much more complicated.
See, the North Korean surveillance state wasn't built from scratch. It was a hybrid. Think of it this way. The Japanese Empire built the house, a very specific kind of house with strong walls and lots of ways to watch people. Then, after the war, the Soviets moved in, did a major renovation, and redecorated the whole thing with a brand new, revolutionary ideology.
So to really understand the final building, you have to look at the original blueprints. We need to rewind the clock to before 1945, back to the era of Japanese colonial rule. This is the foundation that absolutely everything else was built on.
Under the Japanese, the police weren't just guys walking a beat, catching criminals. Their power was immense, and it reached into every corner of life. This quote says it all. They were the moral guide, the overseer of correct thought. It was their job to shape society, from public health rules to what people were actually thinking. They were the engine of total social management.
And get this, 57%. By the late 1910s, over half of the colonial police force was made up of native Koreans. Now that is a wild statistic. It shows this wasn't just some foreign army occupying the country. It was a system that had sunk its roots deep into Korean society, creating a whole class of local people who were trained in these exact methods of control. And the kind of power they had? It was off the charts. They could deliver judgments right on the spot, use flogging as a punishment, and arrest people with a ton of discretion. They were involved in literally everything, even rounding up forced labor for state projects. This was a modern, powerful, and deeply intrusive system of control that was already running like a well-oiled machine.
Okay, so then comes 1945. Japan surrenders, Soviet troops move into the north, and suddenly everything gets turned upside down. That whole colonial framework is suddenly up for grabs. This is the moment of transformation, where that old structure gets a radical new purpose.
And this right here really lays it all out. The goals changed completely, out with colonial order, in with socialist revolution. The methods shifted too, moving toward mobilizing huge crowds of people instead of just direct police action. But the fundamental structures, that experience with a powerful centralized state that gets into every part of society, that was already there for the taking. The Soviets didn't have to invent the idea, they just had to redirect it.
In that chaotic moment right after the surrender, historians talk about a legal vacuum. People started forming their own local committees. The Soviets stepped in to bring some order, but they didn't just slam down their own system. Instead, they helped create a brand new legal and police structure that was a mashup. It cherry-picked elements from both the colonial past and Soviet models.
So you've got the old foundation, but who are the new builders? This is where we see a very deliberate, very radical break from the past.
Now, the new regime was smart. They didn't just put new uniforms on the old police force. No way. First, they completely took apart the old colonial police system. Then, they rebuilt it from scratch, pulling new recruits from groups they knew would be loyal, workers, poor peasants, and, most importantly, people who had actually fought against the Japanese. And finally, they gave this new force an ideological mission. Your job isn't just to keep order. Your job is to defend the revolution.
And check out this incredible twist of fate. You have people like Oh Ki-sop, a communist who'd spent years locked up in colonial prisons because he was fighting the Japanese. He gets released and then finds himself helping to build the very same kind of state security apparatus he'd been fighting against his whole life. The hunted, in a way, became the hunters, using similar tools but for a totally different cause.
But here's the thing.
Controlling a country isn't just about police and prisons. To really remake a society, to build something new, the state needed to get inside people's heads.
And this right here, this was one of the most powerful psychological tools in their entire arsenal. Self-criticism sessions were these public rituals where people had to stand up and confess their own failures, both personal and political. It wasn't just about punishment. The real goal was to get people to police their own thoughts, to internalize the state's ideology, and to enforce discipline from the inside out.
And that discipline wasn't just mental, it was physical, and it was very, very public. The new regime went all in on physical culture, on massive parades and gymnastics displays, just like you see in this photo from Pyongyang in 1948. This wasn't just about exercise, it was about creating these disciplined, active bodies all moving together in perfect unison, a powerful symbol of a society where every individual is just one part of the larger group.
And at the end of the day, that was the ultimate goal, to build what they called an organic whole, a nation that functions like one single, perfectly disciplined body. Every single person had a part to play, and through these public rituals and self-criticism, they were taught to put the will of the party and the leader above their own. So, when you put it all together, you see that the incredible resilience of the North Korean state isn't because it was a simple Soviet puppet. It's because it created this unique system built on a pre-existing foundation of state control, and then supercharged it with revolutionary ideology and brand new methods of social and psychological discipline. It's a true and incredibly potent historical hybrid.
And all of this leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on. By uncovering this hidden history, this dual inheritance, we see how the deep past, even a really painful colonial past, can provide an unexpected blueprint for a nation's future. It's a reminder that to really understand any country today, you've got to be willing to dig into the foundations, especially the ones people don't always talk about.